Thank you so much, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. So today I will be presenting on just a chapter of my master's thesis, which more broadly is about the impact of direct-to-consumer health and ancestry kits from the biotech company 23andMe, and on how society understands health and disability, and how these kits then influence negative eugenic actions and potential policing of reproductive decisions by its users, but also by just the viewers of its commercials. So today I will specifically be focusing on Bodymind representations in 23andMe's video commercials, and spoiler alert that they are very normative representations, as is indicated by my title today. Just to kind of go a bit more on my place in this research, I decided to do it on their health and ancestry kits because of my undergraduate degrees in genetics and women's studies, that this kind of seemed like a great project for my master's program where I could merge my two academic interests. And as someone who identifies as disabled, queer, trans, non-binary, that it became a very personal project because these are all non-normative body-mind identifications, so that it became personal for me as well. So 23andMe, if y'all haven't seen some of their commercials or social media advertisements, that they are a biotech company that was founded in 2006, and they're located in Mountain View, California. It was founded by Linda Avey, Paul Kusenza, and Ann Wojcicki, who is still the CEO of the company, and she was the previous wife of Google co-founder Sergey Brin, so there's a lot of overlap between big biotech companies as well. They offer two direct-to-consumer genetic testing kits, Ancestry, but also Ancestry Plus Health, which is their newer kit. They have genotyped over 2 million people worldwide and have multiple projects that are looking at further expansion through both research as well as through their advertisements. And they received FDA approval specifically just for their carrier testing in 2015 after effectively being shut down in 2013 by the FDA. But beyond their direct-to-consumer kits, they also have a research arm called 23andMe, and have additionally partnered with multiple pharmaceutical companies, and through research that it seems like Ann Wojcicki is pushing to develop pharmaceuticals in the future. So there's been quite a bit of literature and research done on direct-to-consumer genetic testing kits. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of points as to why we should be critical of them. Really that there's a big lack of accuracy in the results that are given, that these are really only probabilities that are given to the consumer, and it's really only on a basis of what 23andMe has for, like, within their private database to compare the results to. And that this is only for, the gene markers that they have decided to test for, and it's only for a handful of diseases. And so, additionally, that these tests cannot take into account epigenetics or environmental factors that lead to these diseases. Secondly, that customers and medical providers really don't have enough information to decipher the results, and a lot of times that consumers will read a high probability of developing a disease as them having the disease, and this is similar to the research that I've done, that medical professionals think similarly and don't really know how to decipher these results. Additionally, that they exist, 23andMe, in a hard to regulate, what has been called a gray area within media, because they have kind of projected themselves as like a fun company, as recreational genetics, because they give you results on, like how likely are you to like coffee in the morning, alongside, you might develop late onset Alzheimer's. So they're kind of trying to play that middle ground, so it is really hard to regulate the company. And lastly, on the topics of like the biocitizen, the bioconsumer, and neoliberalism, as Dorothy Roberts states in her book, Fatal Invention, How Science, Politics, and Big Business Recreate Race in the 21st Century, quote, making citizens responsible for managing their health at the genetic level reflects the shift of responsibility for public welfare from the state to the private realms of the market and the family. Instead, the government and corporate sectors rely on a sense of obligation individuals feel to control their health at the genetic level, end quote. Therefore, this new responsibility to monitor oneself and potential future offspring as well for disease and disability falls in line with neoliberal desires of public goods becoming privatized through corporations. And overall, these kits have made health a commodity and disease and disability something that the customer can, quote, control or manage. So again, my focus specifically today is just on the health and ancestry service, because there has been quite a bit of research already done on the ancestry service as itself, and I will specifically be looking at disability within these kits. So the questions I'm looking at within this paper are, what messages are these direct-to-consumer genetic health tests sending about disability and health? How do visual and textual media shape how we view disability and health? which body minds are represented in these advertisements and which are absent, and how do these products and societal norms shape which body minds we envision in the future and which we erase. So I'm specifically focusing on the advertisements and media representations because disability has long been poorly and negatively represented in media, as has been outlined by disability scholars and by our last speaker. That disabled people are generally represented through the same stereotypes, just a few: the poster child, the beggar, the super crip, the deformed villain, the monster, a sexual deviant, or as asexual, or their storylines are boiled down to plot lines that end in like assisted suicide, or only really representing them as angry and maladjusted people after becoming disabled. And overall, they lead to viewers fearing or pitying disabled people, and additionally lead to people not knowing how to interact with them. So 23andMe appears to be targeting two groups. One, individuals who already have a diagnosis to try and recruit them for research purposes, and two, those who want to manage or prepare for potential diagnoses in their future. And overall, these health advertisements push for the ability of the consumer to manage their own disability or to be a part of research for a cure. 23andMe's advertisements largely focus on the idea of telling a consumer story, which is what they call all of these advertisements here on their website. And they're really trying to personalize the company and portray that these are real-life customers through these lenses. So here I'm going to analyze just 5 of their health stories from their customers. The first one is 23andMe, this is lupus, and this is Mary. 23andMe, this is Parkinson's disease, and that's Claudia. DNA and fitness, Josh Hockett's 23andMe story. An unexpected discovery, Kristen's 23andMe story. And empowering herself, Sarah's 23andMe story. The 3 prevalent themes I'll be looking at is how these reify the normate, the rhetoric of cure and control that are used, and the erasure of disabled body minds. So in these commercials, there's an overwhelming representation of normative identities, i.e. white, heterosexual, cisgender, thin, fit, upper middle class, young, able-bodied, and able-minded individuals, thus providing kind of a quick answer to my question of which body minds are represented in these advertisements and which are absent, but I'm just going to break it down a little bit further. So 4 out of the 5 are cisgender heterosexual women who are married or have a serious boyfriend. And for Josh's commercial, who is the one cisgender man, that it focuses really on his masculinity and his strength because his story is all about fitness. And the importance of family, reproduction, and heterosexuality were all present in the commercials, really revolving around family in some way. And for the mothers in the commercials who are Mary, Kristen, and Claudia, that they continuously reference their children. And with class, all of the people in the stories live in these large and very spacious homes. Some of them even have like in-house gyms, and it really exemplifies the upper middle class family, and therefore showing that they're selling the health and ancestry kit as an attainable good for the middle class consumer. Claudia is the only person of color in all of these commercials, and to further exemplify this racial divide, that her story is really written very differently from all the other commercials. That her thumbnail is the only one that's not a solo shot of her, that her name is not mentioned until halfway through the commercial, that her name is not printed on the screen until the end of the commercial, and that her advertisement closes out with a call to action for others to participate in research, rather than discussing how she feels empowered or hopeful like the remaining advertisements do. Lastly, all the commercials really center on young and healthy and fit customers. Josh, Sarah, and Kristen's story, they're all doing physical activity throughout the commercial, and they also really highlight their engagement and excitement with the new technology, and this really crafts the healthy, forward-thinking millennial customer. Mary and Claudia's stories are a bit different. They are middle-aged women and that have already been diagnosed with lupus and Parkinson's disease, but these commercials are a bit older, so it suggests a shift. And all the commercials center healthy imagery throughout, in a lot of like nature, eye-catching pops of green are in all of them. So that this is really hard, this is a hard advertising strategy to argue against because health is seen as such an inherent good. Further, the obsession of health and the commodification of health makes it harder to think outside of this discourse. So the rise in biotech companies like 23andMe have helped create a new industry of self-monitoring technologies, and because their marketing has embraced increasing or uncovering health as their incentive, that this ushers in these companies as unquestionably good. However, we need to assess what kind of health is being produced and who the intended customer is. Around the rhetoric of cure and control, all of the videos use rhetoric of like staying positive and feeling prepared and in control of their health. And the importance of the future, which aligns with Eli Clark's argument that we want to control how, when, and if disability and death appear in our lives. So this is really prevalent in Mary and Claudia's stories. Mary states, you have to stay positive. Anything you can do to perk up your life and have positive feelings is just going to make you feel good, which is going to lower your stress, which is going to make you happier and healthier. You really just have to take your situation for what it is on that day and have positive hope and faith. You will get through the next step, whatever it is. And on feeling prepared, that Josh, Sarah, and Kristen's storyline center around them preparing themselves and finding a means of control through doing the 23andMe test, that Sarah repeatedly refers to herself as preparing for the potential of developing late-onset Alzheimer's, stating, if I can in any way get more information so I can start to prepare myself, then I'm going to do that. And I think, and quote, I think that that's just so empowering to see that down the road, if you were to happen, how many things you can do now to feel my strongest and best and how to feel most prepared. And then on disability and the future, that the most prevalent language used is reference to the future and desire for a cure, and that all 5 posit 23andMe as the future of research in healthcare. To return to the image of the reproductive and heterosexual mother, both Kristen and Claudia focus on future generations and a desire to cure their respective diseases, focusing on their roles as mothers, which reinforces the societal expectation of women to be nurturing and selfless. Claudia states, quote, what's most important to me has always been the love and well-being of my family. Definitely, I'm doing it for them. And what Kristen says is, quote, when you're a mother, you don't have the luxury of ignoring important things like this. I owed it to my children to find out more. So this desire to control or manage or cure disability and disease is always a future-gazing enterprise, and these utopian imaginations never include the abnormal. So this begs the question, how do these products and societal norms shape which body mind see in the future and which we erase? Because rhetorical moves to emphasize staying positive despite a disease and the desire to control one's biological future and the push for a cure for future generations continuously displaces disease and disability as something undesirable and something to eradicate in order to create a healthier and better future. As Alison Kafer states, it is the very absence of disability that signals a better future. And these desires have tangible impacts, because how then are disabled individuals meant to cultivate a positive self-image or identity? How are they meant to prepare for a future in which they are not imagined or desired in? While Mary and Claudia's storylines revolve around their diagnoses, they don't self-identify as disabled, and they heavily lean into the rhetoric of overcoming and pushing for cure, because as Eli Clare states, overcoming is cure's backup plan. Therefore, the use of individuals like Mary and Claudia are used to inspire able-bodied and able-minded individuals and to inspire those with diseases and disabilities to participate in 23andMe's research studies to create a better future. Here I want to argue that the desire for a better future distinctly leaves out disabled people, and this desire for cure and imagery of the disabled person who has overcome their disability commit both testimonial and hermeneutical injustice for disabled viewers. So testimonial injustice being when a speaker is not believed because they are a member of a group that is the subject of stigma. In that case, because the mainstream conception of disabled people is that they're lacking, suffering, and deserving of pity, that their testimonies are not heard, and if they are heard, they don't match these expectations, that they are not believed. Many of these stereotypes are perpetuated because able-bodied, able-minded people are given the space to speak for disabled people. And with hermeneutical injustice, that all of this also helps create that, which is created when aspects of one's own identity are obscured from them through harmful stereotypes about said identities. This is harmful to disabled people because they are then unable to form a positive disabled identity or to imagine what that might look like, because the only positive way to be disabled is for them to overcome their disability. Overall, both testimonial and hermeneutical injustices silence and erase the lived experiences of disabled people, and this leads to gaps in knowledge and ultimately to the reproduction and reification of old and harmful stereotypes about disabled people. This erasure of physically and visibly disabled people from 23andMe's advertisements separates disabled people from being healthy or being able to attain health through their products. As I have extensively outlined, all of the stories utilize societally understood imagery of health, such as like eating vegetables and hiking and nature and working out, therefore selling their health and ancestry kit as a means for customers to buy into these desired healthy lifestyles. This linking of disability and disease to being unhealthy, in turn, also cements the mainstream view of disability as being undesirable. Therefore, 23andMe does not appear to be advertising to the disabled customer, that is, unless they want to participate in research towards curing their diagnosis or disability in the future, which further emphasizes the question of future for who.